What makes the Durango and Silverton steam excursion so special is that this is a narrow gauge railway, and a standard gauge, they run on a standard 4-foot width track. But with the narrow gauge, it's 3 feet, and the reason being is that when they would map, survey, and eventually spike the area for the route, the terrain was usually very treacherous, and it's very difficult to pass a train through. So by having the track be 3 feet as opposed to 4 feet, A, you would save a lot on costs by having less track, and also you'd have to blast less from the rocks. But also, because the terrain was usually so difficult to navigate through, it would result in some of the most spectacular scenery, as you see behind me, the High Line, which is quite possibly the most photographed steam excursion spot in North America. There are only 3 narrow gauge steam excursions still available in North America. You saw me ride one in Skagway, Alaska last year at the White Pass and Yukon route. And there was also the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad. And that was one of the other extensions that was actually connected to this part right here. And they run from Chama, New Mexico to Eterito, California, or excuse me, Colorado. Jeez, only had one coffee this morning. That route was disconnected in the 1970s, disconnecting the Cumbres and Toltec portion with the Durango and Silverton portion. And to my knowledge, those are the only 3 narrow gauge railways still running on Earth. And I think the most magical part of all these scenic railroads today is that it really gives you a perspective of what the surveyors and the mappers and ultimately the builders and the management had in mind. There was nothing out here 150 years ago. They had a vision, they had a dream, but enough of me telling you about it. Why don't I show you?
There is nothing that can truly prepare you for this, and I really don't think the video does it justice to what I experienced in person. The High Line alone stands 400 feet above the Animas River, below into the depths of the canyon, and running along a ledge literally carved into the cliff, which was just narrow enough to spike track through the canyon and the alpine vistas.
Holy sh!
And this is a setting that truly hasn't changed much since the late 19th century, when these tracks were spiked down. Oh yeah, and be careful if you put your hands out the window, because you will touch the rock if you are not careful. But if for some reason the scenery is not enough for you, the all-you-can-eat coffee will be. But because this is a narrow gauge track, these cars rock and sway a lot, so probably don't wear a white shirt like me if you're planning on drinking coffee on board the train. At this point, we're heading towards the High Bridge, and usually a great spot for a blowout, which, if you don't know, is where the engineers will blow off a bunch of steam to try and clean out the boiler of any sediment trapped inside. Now, sadly, they did it on the opposite side where I was sitting, but you can definitely hear it. And don't worry, there is another blowout coming on the return trip back. But the High Bridge stretches just shy of 200 feet long and will mark our 3rd crossing of the trip over the Animas River. And the full route to Silverton crosses this river 5 times. And shortly after that, we pull into Tank Creek, which is where we will rewater the engine just to make sure we have enough water to make it all the way back to Durango. And it's a pretty simple concept. There's the tank, and there's the creek. And we'll follow the Animas River all the way into our halfway point between Durango and Silverton, as we'll stop here in the middle of the Colorado wilderness and reverse onto the Y track as the sounds of the Animas River flowing south grow louder, officially welcoming us to the Cascade Canyon.
This was a clip for a full-length show. If you want to watch the full episode of the clip you just saw, Click right here, you get the full show, and they go up live every single Sunday. If you want more clips of what you just saw, click right here. You can see the next great hit.